Welcome to today's video on configuring API tests. The modern web and its applications are built on APIs. Whether used for automation, IT extensibility, enhancing application functionality, or for revenue generation, APIs are a cornerstone of today's application framework. Assuring healthy user experiences of these applications requires the monitoring of all individual components that deliver this experience, including any critical web APIs. A degradation of an individual API can result in reduced application functionality or even a complete failure of the application, potentially affecting revenue and brand reputation. API monitoring is therefore a critical operational mechanism for knowing that the individual components are all performing well. API monitoring ensures IT teams are quickly notified of service degradation of any monitored API. The ThousandEyes API test type provides customers with a purpose-built test to monitor web APIs, with functionality that includes multi-step chaining, a credentials repository for authentication, and a range of HTTP methods to support all of your web applications. The ThousandEyes Step Builder can be used to easily configure and chain together multiple API calls and pass information between each step, allowing for the scalable deployment of complex API monitoring. Let's look at how to set up an API test. First, navigate to Test Settings under Cloud and Enterprise Agents and choose Add New Test. Then select Web Layer and API. In the network test target, add a URL, domain name, or IP address, including the TCP port for the site you wish to monitor. Then choose a test interval to set how often the test runs. Next, you can select the agents to use for this test. To configure the individual target APIs, click on Configure Target API. You can configure any environment variables by clicking Variables beneath the environment setup. Here you can configure predefined environment variables as key value pairs. Next, you can configure the first API step, starting with a name for the first step. Then select which HTTP method is needed for this API call. Next, enter in the API request URL. Then you can configure authentication. You can select between None, Basic, or Bearer Token. Under the Parameters menu, you can enter parameters as key value pairs. If you need to add or modify the header field, you can do that under the Headers menu. Under the Assertion Rules tab, you can define what's considered a successful API call. The default is an HTTP status code of 200 OK, but you have a full range of status codes to choose from. Alternatively, you can use the response body to determine a successful API call. You can use the qualifier of is or is not and apply the appropriate response. You can uncheck the collect response for this API step if necessary for regulatory situations. If unchecked, the API response will only be received by the agent for the purpose of the running test and will not be sent to the ThousandEyes platform. Next, we can configure any post request options. You can add any needed variables here and the post API call delay. For subsequent chain steps, we use the API Step Builder. This allows us to add additional API calls for a multi-step API test. When all steps are complete, click Save API Configuration. Now let's look at the advanced settings for the test. Here you can adjust the timeout and the target time for view. This option defines a color coding legend for the API view layer. If the test completion takes longer than this threshold, the results show in red instead of green. When you create a test, network-related metrics are automatically collected by default. Here you can configure any desired network test advanced settings. By using the default option, packet loss, latency, and jitter are monitored and relevant BGP routes to the target destination will be attached. For more information on the network layer data collection, please see our network test creation video. For protocol, you can choose either ICMP or TCP. To collect data for the path visualization, the agent utilizes either TCP via SYN packets or ICMP echo request packets, depending on the network test protocol setting. If a firewall or router's rule set or access control list blocks ICMP or TCP SYN, we will not be able to see hop-by-hop details. In this case, select Path Trace Mode in session, so the agent establishes TCP connection first, then sends a TCP packet to collect the data. Our agent sends 3 series of test packets to collect data for path visualization. You can increase the number of the path trace test up to 10. Once the configuration is completed, click Create New Test. And that wraps up today's video on configuring API tests. Thanks for watching.